Brad Spielberger on the Rich Eisen Show. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
It's not good for Jimmy Garoppolo today, however. So a 2-game suspension, which means the Raiders can void some guaranteed money. Brad, how much is this 2-game suspension going to cost Jimmy Garoppolo?
It's massive. A little bit over $11 million.
$11 million for a 2-game suspension.
Yep, because there is contract language that if he fails, the PED testing and that is suspended for that reason, they can then void these guarantees. They obviously were going to move on this offseason regardless and avoid another $11.25 million payment in a roster bonus. So, yeah, what could have been $22.5 million is going to be zero.
Okay, so that's expensive. I hope he had a note. Well, clearly he didn't have a note from the doctor. If he had a doctor tell him that it would be okay, that would be a fascinating legal battle, but we'll save that for another time. He is not on your top 150 because he was still under contract. Brad, where would Jimmy Garoppolo go on your top 150 now that, as Ian says, he's going to get cut because they're out of the guarantees?
Yeah, we probably will get some cap casualties on there in the near future. Chuck Secor in Pittsburgh might hop on there in the next update. Look, it's actually a pretty good class at quarterback, which is a very rare thing to say. You have Kirk Cousins, your Gardner Minshew's, your Baker Mayfield's, your Ryan Tannehill's. So maybe he's in that range, QB5, QB6. But, I like Jacoby Brissett, some of the other options as well. Not even that high for a guy that's been a starter for a very long time.
All right, so Jimmy Garoppolo is going to slide his way onto the top 150, which you can find right now on PFF. Before we dive into the top 150, and by the way, Chris Jones is number one, the Chiefs defensive tackle who played on that reworked one-year deal and hit a lot of those incentives, including $1 million for making it to Vegas with the Chiefs and making it to the Super Bowl. Yesterday, Cody Whitehair, Eddie Jackson out. A couple of days ago, the Steelers started making their cuts. Who are some other notable names? And we realize that, Brad, the Combine's coming up in 2 weeks, and sometimes agents and GMs can sit down and rework deals. But who else could be a big-name cap casualty?
Yeah, I think some big names that are also interesting because of potential draft implications. Like one that jumps out to me is with the Arizona Cardinals and DJ Humphries did tear his ACL at the very end of the season. Not why I'm saying that. Also think just with the Paris Johnson selection last year, his play kind of fallen off a little bit on a third deal. Maybe he was a name. And now if they do move on, I know everyone thinks Marvin Harrison Jr., but maybe they go out and get a Joe Alt, get an Olu Fashanu, go a different direction. So he's interesting to me. The running backs are always going to be interesting. We talked Joe Mixon pre-show in Cincinnati. Maybe it's a pay cut, not just a straight out cut like we saw with Aaron Jones the last couple of years with Mixon himself. But those running backs are always interesting. And then, of course, the other quarterback, we're all waiting for the domino to fall with Russell Wilson in Denver. Seems like the writing's on the wall. They obviously had the whole back and forth and the debate, speaking of grievances and legal battles and all that. I think he is still the name to watch before March 13th in Denver.
All right. There's also David Bakhtiari. His number is like 20, but the question with him is, can he still play? Does he have to retire? Does he just go and play with Aaron Rodgers? Do the Jets even want him? But what about, and this one's interesting because he got paid 2 years ago, coming off an injury. What about Michael Gallup?
Yeah, he's a very interesting one. They go out and make the trade for Brandon Cooks. Like you said, he did get paid on that torn ACL. And I actually love the thought process there, the idea of, take care of a homegrown guy that had been a very good player, a good deep threat, good body control, and footwork near the sideline. You just haven't seen that same explosiveness from him. So again, a guy for me where I think maybe it's just hey, we'll give you a pay cut. We want you to rehab in our building and build up your strength in our building. And they're not great at receiver. Like I love Brandon Cooks, but he's now more of a number 3. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is CeeDee Lamb, but yeah, he is a guy that I'm sure when you got to pay Dak Prescott 50 plus, CeeDee Lamb maybe 30 plus. Next offseason, Micah Parsons might be the first $40 million per year defensive player in NFL history. Everyone else is on notice.
9.5 is what the post-June 1 cut would be for Michael Gallup. Right now, he has like a top 5 cap hit at wide receiver, considering they're about to bust into the big money part of that deal. There's also the interesting Nick Chubb situation because Nick and I had this conversation back in August. His cap number this year was going to be like 14, 15, 16, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I said, Nick, have you thought about this? You're going to be like 27 next year. If you have another 1,500-yard season, you're a fascinating test case. What do you do? Because you'll still be at the top of your game. However, your age will be getting up there and your number will be getting up there. And he nodded like he knew where I was going. Yes, he had thought about it, but then the catastrophic injury week 2. The Browns have said that they will try to do everything to keep Nick Chubb there. I just don't know what that will look like, because you can't pay a guy coming off that injury $15 million, but he means so much to your locker room and to your city. But I digress. All right, Brad Spielberger, PFF. Let's get to your top 150. Chris Jones, seemingly, and he's number 1 on your list, was on stage Wednesday agreeing to a 3-year deal. Not really, but he said he's not going anywhere. His agent, all the while, is tweeting beer emojis saying, cut these guys off and get them off stage.
Yeah, reminds me of Mike Evans, I think, offering to take a pay cut on the middle of a boat ride when Tom Brady was drinking some tequila in the background. So,
right.
Yeah, never the favorite day of the agent. Look, I mean, I think he is clearly looking to become one of the highest paid players at this position, but last offseason, at least in my eyes, a little bit underwhelming. You know, guys like Quinnen Williams and all the players, Jeffrey Simmons, Dexter Lawrence, got good deals, no question. But you still have Aaron Donald way up there above $30 million per year. And yes, he's Aaron Donald. He's in rarefied air. But I thought that gap would be kind of, met closer to the middle. And then Chris Jones probably wants $27, $28, $29 million a year. For my money, he's worth it. I know he's 29, going to be 30, but you saw this past year. He's lining up as a stand-up 7-tech outside linebacker and winning and getting the edge against good tackles. He is still, in my eyes, one of the best defensive players in the entire NFL, and I think there's still good football in there for a couple more years.
Well, let's go down your list here and try to figure out where there's actual movement, because, Brad, you and I know that when we get to the 11th, that Monday, when the window opens, tags will be used, and a lot of these guys won't have the ability to actually move. So after Chris Jones, there's Kirk Cousins. He's going to hit free agency. Do we think he actually goes anywhere?
I'm starting to lean towards as a possibility. I think what Minnesota does at 11 is interesting. Can they trade up in the that top 5, top 6 range, get the fourth quarterback we think off the board? I think Atlanta's interesting. I think Denver's interesting. Maybe a Las Vegas now. I just think there might be enough suitors that entice him to leave. But I'm sure he'd love to stay, and I'm sure Kevin O'Connell would love to have him back.
All right. So in Jacksonville, they've already said, Trent Baalke said a couple of weeks ago that they're going to tag Josh Allen. So he's 3rd on your list. He's not going anywhere. T. Higgins, they got to pay Jamar. I mean, they can't pay him both, right? T. Higgins is gone, isn't he?
I think he'll get tagged, but there's an outside chance that the tag and trade, more likely play on the tag, kind of Jesse Bates route, and then see where it goes from there.
Brian Burns at 5.
I think that's a very interesting tag and trade. I think you and I get to Indy in a week, and we're going to hear a lot of scuttlebutt about, our team's going to try to pry Brian Burns away from the Carolina Panthers this offseason.
Justin Madubuike had a huge season in Baltimore. Can they pay him?
They can, but they have so many massive contracts. And also that entire defense has so many good players, coming up for new deals. Both the edge rushers they added in August, and Jadeveon Clowney and Kyle Van Noy. Obviously, Patrick Queen, I think, becomes a top 10, maybe top 5 paid linebacker in the NFL. Geno Stone led the NFL in interceptions for a long time this season. So I think they are going to bring Madubuike back on a big number, probably $20+ million per year. But he might be the only one they can afford.
Christian Wilkins isn't getting out of the building in Miami.
I
can't see that.
Yeah, me neither. But yeah, Robert Hunt, him, Connor Williams, they are getting expensive there in Miami.
They are. All right, so he's 7. Antoine Winfield is an interesting one because he was a 2nd-round pick, so he's hitting free agency earlier. Also because, Brad, the last couple of years, and you mentioned Jesse Bates, he got a nice deal, but generally speaking, safeties don't get paid. They don't get the huge deals. So what do the Bucs do? I can't imagine they let Antoine Winfield go scot-free.
No, it's a great shout. It is a position that it's tough to do well in free agency, except for, the occasional Jesse Bates deals. I think Winfield comes back on a franchise tag, but I also think Tristan Wirfs probably becomes the highest paid tackle in the entire NFL, in NFL history this offseason by a comfortable margin, if I had to guess. So I think it's a tag, and probably want to get a deal done, but, he is repped by the guy that reps pretty much every top safety in the NFL, including Jesse Bates. It's not going to be an easy conversation because he was remarkable this past season. Good ball skills, good down in the box, good against the run. I think you're looking at a top of market deal, and maybe a tag is how 2024 goes. All
right. Then we get to the corners here at 9 and 10. This is Brad Spielberger's list, PFF, top 150 free agents, and free agency, the window opens on the 11th, and then the deals can be done on the 13th. It is a really good year for corners in at least the top half of the draft. Wiggins, Arnold, Mitchell, Take your pick here. There are others as well. You have corners at 9 and 10. You have Jalen Johnson from the Bears at 9 and L'Jarius Sneed from the Chiefs, who we just saw put on a virtuoso performance down the stretch in the postseason, at 10. L'Jarius Sneed has already said, like, pay me. I want to get paid. And you have to factor him and Chris Jones together here, right? How do they work this in Kansas City? Jalen Johnson at 9 has made it clear going back to last year in camp that he wants a new deal. But, Brad, there are others who turn on the tape and say that Jalen talks a bigger game than he plays. The Bears have a good young secondary. Do they pay Jalen Johnson?
And I think you saw they feel that way to a degree, at least with how, going to the deadline, letting him talk to other teams. Obviously, they didn't make a move, and Ryan Poles came out and said he wanted a late first, early second, a pick that gets him a player of that caliber, which didn't come about. So I think it's a franchise tag, and I think Johnson himself recently said on the radio in Chicago wants to be the highest paid corner in the NFL. I'm not sure the Bears view him in the same market.
I don't think they do.
Yeah, I'm with you. So that one's going to be fascinating. And then L'Jarius Sneed, to me, is a fundamental Chiefs philosophical question where, look at the guy they just played in Charvarius Ward. He was in the same situation a couple of years ago in Kansas City, but they drafted a guy named L'Jarius Sneed. So now you drafted Josh Williams, Trent McDuffie, Shamari Connor, who played some safety this year. Like, that's what they do. They churn these day 3, late day 2 defensive back picks, and I think they want Sneed back, but I wouldn't bet on it.
I'm not going to go through your whole list because there are 150 names, but number 11, because we did the top 10. Number 11 to me is really interesting, and I talked to him last week as well. That's Michael Pittman of the Colts, who has come on. He put up a season this past year, and he's a second-round pick, and he still has that second-round pick chip on his shoulder, understandably. All of them do. But he put up a season that is up there with Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne, his coach, and T.Y. Hilton when it comes to Chiefs all-time history at that position. And the wide receiver position, Mike Evans probably doesn't go anywhere. Like, is Stephon Diggs cut loose? He's older. Justin Jefferson is going to get a deal. You'd have to think this offseason. Regardless, he can't walk. Where does Michael Pittman fit in all of this?
I think he's viewed kind of just that tier below. You mentioned the second-round draft pedigree. He also didn't test very well, and it's interesting because, okay, he still gets 100 catches and 1,000 yards seemingly every year, but he has a fascinating profile. He's this receiver outside guy with an average depth of target like 9 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. It's just not really a profile we see very often, but almost never drops the football, extremely sure-handed, big catch radius, and this past year you saw better after the catch, making players miss in space. I don't think he's viewed in that like tier 1 receiver echelon, but just like right below those guys. I still think his deal probably starts with a 2. I just don't know if he gets in like the DK Metcalf, Debo Samuel, 22, 23, 24 million per year we all saw last year. But I don't know. At the same time, 2 guys you mentioned, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, you got Brandon Ayuk. Like, that market went down last year. I think it's going to be trending positive again this year.
Right, but the other guys here that could truly be free, T. Higgins might stay. Hollywood Brown, I'm sorry, he's not going to get that kind of money. He's not a 1. And then you're looking around for names. Do you want to be in the Calvin Ridley business? As you point out, that is a true one-and-done deal there. In Jacksonville, they gave up draft capital. He was hit or miss. He was either big game or totally on the side of a milk carton this year. Does somebody get in the Calvin Ridley business? It's fascinating. And there will be other names here. Other guys will get cut, like Michael Gallup we mentioned. I don't know that he is going to get cut, but, I went to the Combine a couple of years ago, certain that Amari Cooper was going to get cut. He didn't, right? He hung around another year, and then the Cowboys flipped him to the Browns, and the Browns are thrilled that they have him. There are so many moves that happen in the back of steakhouses in Indianapolis coming up in 2 weeks, and we are all here for it. In the meantime, go to PFF.com and check out Brad Spielberger and his great crew, the top 150 for NFL free agents. We haven't even hit Derrick Henry. Brad, real quick before we let you go. Brad, Derrick Henry almost went to Baltimore at the deadline last year. They have J.K. Dobbins coming off of another major injury who wanted to get paid last year. He didn't, and then the injury right out of the gate in September. Do they have money for Derrick Henry? Is Derrick Henry a cowboy? Play the game. What do you
It
think?
could be fascinating because they also have Gus Edwards is now a pending free agent. You mentioned Dobbins, a pending free agent. They could find a way. Like we said, you let a lot of those defensive players go and hope the new defensive staff can just get everything out of the guys they currently have. But adding that rushing element, like imagine zone read with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and what defenses are supposed to do to try to defend that duo. Good luck to those defenses.
Yeah, good luck. And good luck to everyone for free agency. Brad, travel safely. Feel better from Vegas. It's finally, I know, we're all getting back to health. I will see you in Indy, sir.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.